Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
My God, it's full of stars.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time bonus. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by my regular partner, Julian Darius. And Julian, we are covering another short film, one on the bonus content. This is a bit of a title. I'm going to read this one to you. Please speak continuously and describe your experiences as they come. This is the short film made by Brandon Cronenberg in association with Possessor. This is a little harder to come by, but what were your initial thoughts about Please Speak?
I love this movie, to be honest. I mean, I actually would give this an 8. Like, I'm really happy with this movie, and it's short. It's like 9 minutes.
Yeah, just under 9. Yeah.
I mean, and it has a lot of the sort of visuals that Possessor has, and I think that's what it's also a sci-fi movie about somebody with a microchip in their brain that's being triggered by somebody else, and the twist at the end, if we're going to give it away, is sort of like you don't know what's reality anymore. But it's like, no, I identify with that, right? I like these sequences. I think they're very effective, and they seem a little bit sort of Ken Russell to me, sort of like altered states with better technology. I just found this sort of charming. What about you?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this. It was a 10 minutes that just sort of flew by, and when it ended, I was like, oh, that's disappointing. I wanted more. Like, it wasn't like disappointing. It was in the sense of, oh, I wish I hadn't seen that. This was like, oh no, I really enjoyed this. There's something here that's fascinating. It felt like I really like short stories that have that sort of ambiguity where you're sort of dropped in, and then you sort of you get the sort of story, and then you sort of leave, and you're like, hang on, I've just experienced something, but I don't really know the context. I think there's an author called Robert Aikman that does this sometimes with a few of his stories, and there's a couple of others. And I really like that this sort of disorientation that this short film creates, just the mood that goes with it. I thought is fantastic. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed this. I think to give a bit of a plot, but like you say, it's just a woman. It's graphic. It's got it's clearly doing got some special effects, as well as
great stuff. I thought, some of them better than Possessor, which is I mean, there's a skull, like we see both in the movie Possessor and in this, which was sort of those techniques for shooting that stuff.
Yeah, a tester, isn't it?
This. Yeah, but there's in both movies, you sort of see a face collapse where it's like a really well-made face that collapses. Except in this one, there's a skull inside in like glue, and the skull emerges. And I was
screaming
like,
skull.
Holy
Yeah,
shit.
the black screaming skull coming out of this thing is just. I was like, oh man, I want that on a poster. Like that's the poster for this film. It's amazing. There's this great sort of. So the story is there's a woman. She's in some sort of treatment clinic, because this is a treatment in this. Like, she has had this microchip or this probe inserted into her brain, and then sort of rests on the top of her head. But to keep it hidden from people, she has to wear a wig, and I love that as a bit of a sort of a nice little detail. It's clearly sort of it makes it easier because there's scenes that don't have to apply that as makeup, but. I like it as this concept of having to hide this treatment as well. And then she's sat in the room, and the probe is activated. Like the doctor is flicking these switches, and then it's like, it literally is just tell me what you see. And she goes through these dream states, each denoted by a different color. And in each one, just some of the ideas are weird, but like I love them. I really love them. There were so many like odd ones. And weird, like the first one she goes to, she says it's like she goes it's the afterlife. She's died. It's the afterlife, and she's been introduced to people that she loved, and she keeps having to sort of like understand something's changed in them, and she has to do, and that's a key point because that's what comes back for the twist. I mean, there's no, I'm going to spoil it because it's no big thing, but
you can't talk about it without.
Yeah, you sort of need it, but also in some bits, that's almost like the least interesting bit as well. Where I'm like, she's like, oh, then I realize I'm in some sort of hell and I've got to do this stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That middle one though, the middle one, I was fascinated by. There's three. There's the middle one that it goes blue, and she says the point she makes is, for some reason I know I'm the world's greatest boxer, and I can take anybody at this table. However, I live in a world where boxing isn't a thing, so nobody understands what I'm talking about.
The only thing that I'm good at.
Yeah, this sense of this the line she's here that my sense of worth is tied up to something that doesn't exist in this world. I can
identify with that. It seems to me like so French. Like I remember. There's a great line. I forget who it was by a famous French artist who said, like, "Do you believe you can have a dream that changes your life and you don't remember it?" This like love of ambiguity, this love of like the idea that you could be. Except here, it's got that Cronenberg haunting kind of quality. The idea that like the thing that you're really good at is something that doesn't exist yet, or maybe in this
Never
universe,
will.
or
Yeah.
has disappeared, or but then her hands are, there's the visuals of her hands are stitched together like boxing gloves.
Well, that was but the line for that's again another line that I love that matches the visual, because she says about I'm the best boxer and something, and she's but I also know I'll never be able to play the piano. And it pans down, and she, like you say, her fingers are all sort of like crunched over to be like fists and stuff. And I'm just like, oh my god, this is like, I'm loving everyone around the table, but like, because it's got that dream quality, because it's never referred to, but they're all sat around eating pastries, but not eating them nicely, like shoveling them into their face. But it's never referenced in her. She never talks about it, but it's what she's seeing, and it's just the visuals in it. Yeah, it's just. And then
it's fun.
It is. It's
fun.
But but also like provocative. Like I like some of this stuff. And then obviously it goes to the third one, which is where it sort of like it peaks, and it's a bit more. She's and again I love this idea that like she knows that she's being controlled, and she's I see a doctor across the room, and it's sort of question reality. But then she's but then I see that the doctor is wearing a wig, and someone's controlling that person's perception of reality, and then there's that guy in the corner, and it's like this endless list of people being controlled by another person stood behind them.
God, I love that. Yeah.
Oh, it's disorientating and like it's haunting. Of you just see these people in corners lurking, controlling the person in front of them, and then all the naked people
being controlled.
Yeah. But then there's all the naked people like walking upstairs, and at first I was like, what? But each one of them was wearing a wig. Like, all those people are wearing it. And you're like, oh my god, they're all under control. And she's like, it's just
It's like it reminds me of sort of like the bodies of Westworld, where it's like, are these all like there's something android about it? Like, I don't think they are, but it's like, are these all utterly being controlled? Like, not just like they've been shut off when they're not in use now or something. I mean, but it's very disturbing, whatever it is.
And she's sort of sat in a glass sort of bubble chair over the top of them, sort of like, and that's when she loses her. To me, like she loses her identity in this idea of being controlled, and the black, because it's her face, isn't it, that sort of degenerates, and the black skull comes out screaming, which is just the best image ever. Like that's an album cover. That is.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no hard rock group that's ever done a better album cover than that. I mean, Brandon Cronenberg can give up on film and just make heavy metal album covers for the rest of his life and live well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's the visuals in this. it's just really good. And then obviously it gets to the twist because it comes back to her. Let's say it comes back to the reality in which you have started the film in.
Right.
And
The
then
testing room.
Yes. And she goes out and she has lunch with what you find out is to be her husband. Or at least I think it's alluded to be her husband. And he's brought this black sort of gooey cake.
Mm-hmm.
And he's being very sort of like very tactile with it as he cuts it up. Like he cuts a slice out the middle, and even I'm like, dude, that's just gonna go wrong. Like you're really not thinking this through. But it's obviously linking back to the skull and this other stuff. But I had to check because it focuses in on his face, and he's got this mole on his cheek.
Oh yeah, right.
And I was like, oh no! And so I went back, and so when you see the visual of her in her hell meeting the loved ones, she meets her husband, and he doesn't have that mole
right
on his cheek, and so then you're left to question, or she's left to question: is this an alternative? Is this a changing reality, or has my perceptions of people changed, or whatever? Like, is she trapped in hell,
or was I hallucinating them wrong?
Yeah.
Well, and that ending is so well shot. And I think that it's a real testament to Brandon Cronenberg's skills, because if you think about it, we've just gone through this tour de force of the skull emerging, and this sort of like what I was referring to of the sort of like altered states, like the very effective rows of heads reacting across the screen, and a lot of just sort of trippy imagery that's pretty effective and evocative. And then we go to this real world, quote unquote, sequence, and we're not shown any of these elements. We're not shown her hands, but she
No.
sort of like looks down anxiously, and we're anticipating the shot of her boxing glove hands, right? Like,
Well,
what's
she
not
is
being shown, right?
Yeah.
But we also are wondering, we see the twist coming, but we don't know like which hallucination it's going to be from, right? And the film is sort of playing with you. And I think at that point, like, a couple things occur to me. One is what it's not showing is horrifying. We are doing the psycho thing of like, imagine the stabbing that isn't actually occurring, or being shot. We're imagining those hands. We're imagining we're in her mental state as she's anxious about this. And then the second thing is like with that cake, like, we're disturbed. This film has taken this mundane thing, and the way it's shot is just so gooey and gross that it looks like that head emerging, right? So it's like you can't go back to normal reality. And I've seen cakes like this where it's just like, oh my God, I don't want to touch that. Like, that looks like so syrupy and gross. Why is a human eating this? But here it's linked to real sort of body horror stuff.
That's the thing. I love the fact it's suggested body horror. So it's the fact that, like, because if it'd have come along and because there are 100 ways you could cut that cake. Well, it's not, but like, if he'd have just cut an end piece, just cut the slice off the end, and it had fallen off, and he'd gone, there you are. Like, it's very neat. It wouldn't, it's the way it's shot. Like, he cuts a slice right out of the middle, but then he takes out with his fingers, and it gets all over the plate, and the goo's like dripping in the way it's shot through the middle, and it's dripping back into, like, it's this. You're looking at something that's a dessert. Like, it's just a cake. It's a cake with a runny, chocolatey surf top. But all of a sudden, I'm like, ew! Like, you've made this like some visceral, body fluid kind of body horror out of this cake because I'm seeing this skull. Yeah, it's amazing. The effect that this film has.
It's pretty effective. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it does. There are elements of this in like Videodrome too. There is, and sometimes you get it in sort of like gross out body horror stuff where I have this question of sort of like, why, like, I understand why we evolved to find poop disgusting, right?
Yeah.
Because we so easily are contaminated by it. Probably a huge percentage of all humans who have ever lived have died from
Food
from
poisoning
poop,
of some.
from
Yeah,
poop,
yeah,
basically.
yeah,
Poop kills us all the time, right?
yeah.
So poop is like this thing that comes out of us that, but we're also really disgusted by. But it's really weird to think like how grossed out we are by our own entrails, by our own bodies. That
Mm,
like our own bodies, including, like not just poop, but like our insides or genitalia, is often disgusting to us.
yeah.
And there is this weird thing that I'm always perplexed by, that like the artificial, the robot, the artificial glass and concrete and steel house seems very clean and very beautiful to me. And then, even though I love nature, I mean, real life and
Mm.
food and all these things seem really gross and disgusting and dirty. And why is it that like the replicant that leads is really disturbing to me and dirty to me, but the android isn't? Um, why do I, as a biological animal, think that? And I think that the body horror stuff and this and Cronenberg and Brandon Cronenberg in particular in this film gets at some of that, just like with that cake. It makes me think about like just this organic cake and how like gross and uncomfortable I am just in my own body. And
Yeah, I agree. No, it's just this. It's without showing. I mean, that's what's interesting. I mean, you and I obviously watched Videodrome, and I think, and we watched The Fly, and so we were both sort of Cronenberg fans. And there's others I'm gonna watch more of his films. But there's a David Cronenberg is in your face with it. Like there's with all his films. Oh, even up to his latest one, Future Crimes and stuff, like the viscerality of the body horror is in your face. Like, you're gonna have James Woods reaching inside his own stomach to pull, and these other stuff. Like,
mm,
it's gonna be quite obvious on screen, and that's great. And I love that. And I think the special effects and everything and the way it's been presented are great. But there's something with what Brandon Cronenberg's doing, is just it plants this thought in your head. I mean, he's got not 10 minutes to do this. It plants a thought in
mm,
your head. It show you keep getting these images. The people eating. I mean, the other thing as well is you've not only have you had the skull, you've had the people eating cake and stuff in the second dream, like shoveling it in a disgusting way. It's all over their faces. It's all over the tables. So he keeps dropping these thoughts, these ideas, and images into your head, and then presents you with something at the end, which should be completely innocuous, should be completely everyday, but you're all of a sudden you are revolted by it because of how he's done it, and you would then associate all this body horror stuff. And you're like, hang on, no, I haven't seen, other than the skull coming out someone's face, I haven't seen like someone turning into a fly. I haven't seen this, I haven't seen that, but it's so effective in that way. In that moment, I was just like, wow, this is really well done. This is a very, very talented filmmaker.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that all of these sequences kind of get at some sense of paranoia. They're very effective in triggering our paranoia.
Mm,
Um, even going back to that first sequence of something's different, right? That's probably the least visual, the least
mm,
interesting from a cinematic angle. But even that, this idea, I'm fascinated by these sort of like, I love the phrase, and I realize this is a sort of hell. I'm in a
in
sort of
every
hell.
single one, yeah.
Right. And, that it always comes down to that. And I'm sort of haunted by this idea and by visions of the afterlife that are very different from a sort of Judeo-Christian
Mm.
one. Because I think if there is one, who's to say what the hell it is? The odds that
Mm.
it's, either an angelic choir or a bunch of demons, with pokers is very low. Roll the dice and let's see what we come up with on this D&D horror show.
Yeah.
Um, but I quite like that. But I also like this idea of sort of the other thing that we didn't talk about is sort of, she says it's iterative. And so she identifies what's changed in her husband, but then something else has changed. And it could be a taste of his, it could be as subtle as something like that. And it occurred to me like, oh, this is people growing apart.
Yeah.
This is like written as like a Twilight Zone version of hell for like you marry somebody, but you keep growing, right? So like you're not, if you're the perfect person, you know, and of course in reality you hope to grow together and support each other, right? But this is like some hellishly paranoid idea of like, oh God, we're not static. Utopias are built on us being static. We're
Yeah.
growing apart one opinion at a time. You know, like, oh my
Well,
God.
you're right, because it's cumulative, isn't it? That's what she says. It's iterative and
Uh-huh.
cumulative. Like, you know, so yeah, it's not that, oh, something was different that time and then it's back to normal and now it's something else. It's like, oh no, that thing changed. So he doesn't have a mole in that version, but he still doesn't have a mole, but now he doesn't like sausages. You know, something as silly as that. But like, it's but then the next one, he hasn't got a mole, doesn't like sausages, and you know, he now likes the smell of roses, or you know, something you go, oh, actually that's changed. And it can feel like, you're right. I never thought about that. This idea of, because she says something, doesn't she? But is it at what point is it the person that you knew?
Well,
Still,
it's the ship, right? It's the Odysseus's ship, Thyestes'
yes,
ship.
yeah.
Where you replace a plank at a time, right? You repair it. You know, at what point? I mean, this is true. All of our cells are regenerating. At what point are we the same person? At what point is this the person who I married?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You're right, because it is, isn't it? It's about the changing. The whole thing is about this thing. And this is what I think. I've just realised this. Every segment builds up to that twist. Each segment, and this is in 10 minutes. Like, we're talking about this as if it's like a full, you know, movie. But each of the segments, like you say, you learn about this iterative change of people. So, all right, so you're now learning that she has concerns or paranoia about her partner, because it's her partner that's presented in that thing. She then, in the middle one, you know that she then feels out of place in the world in which she lives. You know, she talks about this thing of being a boxer, but in a world that doesn't know boxing. You also then are given the image of the disgusting cake being eaten. So you're growing on her paranoia. This is an iteration. You've been introduced to her paranoia, which continues to grow in each segment, and then you're introduced to the disgustingness of the cake. And in the third one, because you've got a paranoia, because someone's watching someone who's watching someone who's watching someone, you maintain that sort of the visceral nature of things with the black goo that keeps coming back. But now you've got her feeling trapped because there's all these people there, but she's separate from them because they're all doing something different. And then at the end of it, lunch, a piece of cake with your husband, all of a sudden becomes this hugely traumatic and triggering event.
Yeah, and you're right. It does connect to all three. That all three are kind of setting up that ending, but by planting ideas in your head.
Yeah.
Right? That, you know, the movie is the microchip in your head, planting these little ideas.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, and that third one is about not just iterative, right? Of like, there's somebody controlling something. What is the real reality? But also about the collapse of identity, right? You know, which I think is such a meaningful and important, philosophical concept of sort of not just if I keep changing, but, you know, what is my identity? Is it just my brain? You know, I can trigger, thoughts in somebody's brain. You know, we can electrify it. You know, if you damage your brain, you change your personality. So was that a free choice? Was that like, did your soul change when you also got hit by that car? I mean, how do we understand what it means to be me? If I'm a different person, it doesn't make sense to send somebody to prison for 20 years if in 20 years they're literally not the same person. I mean, if it takes 2 years to even run through the trial for something they did 5 years ago, by the time they're sent to jail, are you sending the same person to jail who committed that crime? There's some connection between the two, but I don't know that that's the same. It's not the same person. It's just not.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about experience, isn't it? That's the thing about sort of like, the thing of experience and as you say, we change both physically and psychologically over those times. Not for good and bad. I think is sort of the thing to consider. But no, it's a yeah. It's one of the things just to sort of to round it out, because we'll to talk about on this is we are doing this back to back. We have just talked about THX, the short film, and not to bash on George Lucas at all. Anyway. And these were done at different times. We should definitely highlight that the THX was a student film, most definitely done by very young, and this was done
50 years earlier.
Yes, exactly, with a different budget, and this has been done in the middle of a film career. Like, he's had previous films, Antiviral, I think, and something else, and so but there's definitely this idea of technique in both of them. But this feels like a more sort of like a vision where they've gone, oh, this is my style now. This is what I'm doing. And you can sort of associate it, I think, with the films that he's made. I don't know. What are your thoughts on?
I think it's interesting that both of them have sort of visuals that are for the sake of visuals, right? Or that are about the look and feel, right? Rather than the narrative component. But obviously, there's more narrative component in Brandon Cronenberg. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a comparison between the two. Obviously, it's not fair because 50 years have passed, and Brandon Cronenberg also had more experience. He has access to technology that lets him do this stuff. It's not really a fair comparison.
No.
But Brandon Cronenberg does seem to have an uncanny ability to trigger those kinds of emotional responses to make the audience think about the hands that aren't being shown in that file. I was very impressed at that moment where I was like, I feel anxious. I can feel that twist coming. I'm not sure what that twist is, but I'm feeling anxious for this person.
Yeah.
And I am being directed so masterfully as the audience member to like the camera sort of like moves but doesn't go down to show the hands. It's so expert how it's done.
It is. I mean,
I'm impressed.
I'm impressed. I really enjoyed this. It was a fascinating watch. It's been a fascinating discussion as well, which is what this feels like this feels like a it's a short story. Like, it's a weird tale. It's a short story. Like, you've been thrown into the middle of this and you were left wanting more at the end, which is fantastic. One thing just to think about, obviously, there's this whole thing at the moment about Nepo babies, sort of like nepotism in Hollywood and stuff like that. And sometimes I get it, but what I want to say is, obviously, this is Brandon Cronenberg, the son of David Cronenberg, so but this film in itself just shows a talent and a skill that to me says, oh no, I want to see this person make films. Like, I'm not just coming to this because I want to see the son of David Cronenberg. I've seen this and I'm like, no, I want to see this guy's films. Like, he's got something to say here that I'm curious and fascinated by. And I think that's important, really.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts then for Please Speak?
No, people should track this down. People should watch this. It's well worth watching.
It is. It's on the bonus features for Possessor, on both the DVD and the Blu-ray. It's difficult to find out online. I'm not saying you should use a VPN to mask your location, but if you want to use the free trial on the Criterion channel or on Criterion Online, it's on there. It's a 7-day free trial. This is 10 minutes long. Do the math. You don't need the full trial.
Scott, was your beard shaped like that earlier?
No. and my eye color has changed twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, this is good. I do recommend this.
And I realize I'm in a kind of hell.
It's the iterative of the podcasts. Each episode's slightly different.
This is very true.
But yeah, no, this is good. I enjoyed this. I think this is. I'm not often a fan of short films. I find them a little bit like, it's a vanity thing, or it's something a bit silly. But this was
to get meaty in 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, but this is a good job, and I'm really impressed. I'm pleased with it. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this was another little bonus nugget for you, and go check out obviously the main feed because we'll be talking about Possessor associated with this. But Julian, thank you very much for a fascinating conversation.
Thank you,
and to all our
and
supporters.
thanks for helping to our supporters.
Yes, thank you very much to all our supporters. Hope you're enjoying this, and we shall see you on the next episode.